Harriet, as one of our wonderful coaches, give us a sense of how you walk an executive through that process of assessing what their passion is all the way through to as far as you go to, how to begin to be ready for the opportunity that you're awaiting. Because as we said, it's one thing to hear a lot of noise, but getting wise counsel is a whole other kettle of crawdads. So tell us about the wise counsel part.
Okay. So I should say this is one of my favorite parts of what I do. I often pinch myself because I get to live my passion every day professionally as well. I love getting to the why that people bring to the table and helping them figure out what that's going to transfer to, and then how are we going to get there. It starts by self-reflection, and it's very difficult to do this work without some level of self-reflection. So we'll give questions, a lot of which we've been talking about. What are you passionate about? What would you miss if it wasn't available to you in work? um, what do you want to be remembered for? It could be about what motivates you, which could be location fit, company fit, work fit. There's all kinds of different self-reflecting questions first, and then having that conversation. And where I think it's helpful is that we are listening to someone we really don't know. Yes, they've had an hour and a half or so with someone like Sandra as a strategist to begin that thinking and conversation. Yes, we have the written input that they've provided, but at the end of the day, we really don't know that person. So you come to us in a safe space, if you will, of someone that's not going to bring any assumptions about you with them. So that sometimes is where it's difficult to talk to a friend or a family member or a trusted advisor or whatever. Although I would say don't rule some of that feedback out, because sometimes they can be brutally honest for me, especially my adult children who are now in the work world, about certain perspectives, but they can be helpful if you think about them. But in listening from that perspective, in connecting the dots with them, in feeding back some possibilities, in asking additional follow-up questions, we can really close that loop around what's out there in those questions. And once we've closed that loop about what you're thinking, then we can get to work around defining one's value, translating that into a branding strategy, if you will, developing whatever needs to be developed, whether it's resume, LinkedIn, etc. And then, of course, preparing them for interviews where they can bring their full self to the table, targeting whatever it is that's been defined. So that can be a complete remake, if you will, or restart for some people. For others, like Mark said, if someone is passionate about doing turnarounds and transformations and whatnot, it's really not a complete redefinition. It may just need to be tweaked or tailored or focused a bit. So those are kind of the steps. A little bit of self-reflection, a lot of conversation, and then putting a plan in place.
Right. Mark, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I just building off of some of the points Harriet said again, to also join her in just love doing what we're doing. And we meet the people that we work with, the executives who are getting coaching, and they do pre-work, but we don't know them, as Harriet said. And the impressions we form are similar to what impressions would be formed of a hiring executive. And we're able to see how they come across and look at how they present themselves, how they've answered certain questions, and as Harriet described, gone through exploration with them. But at the end of the day, one of the telling questions that I look at: what are you most proud of in your career? What gave you joy and why was that? And there's a lot to be extrapolated from that. And, also, again, reinforcing the need for an objective view. Most executives have a hard time seeing the forest for their own trees. As a coach, I also have a coach. And during the day, by the way, for me, it's interesting as I help guide executives. And during my day job, I work with a Fortune 50 company. And I get to not only give advice, but I get to practice my advice. As I help others try to find their passion, sometimes I need help finding mine, and there's a lot of difference between giving the advice and practicing the advice. And the stress test after I do coaching and then I'm back in the Fortune 50 environment, I think, okay, now I'm trying to do the advice I've given. It's a lot harder. And it's a chance for me to stress test. Am I really clear on my passion? And am I following that? And interestingly enough, it's not always the same answer. Ask me, or if I ask myself that question, 8 in the morning, Monday, middle of the day, Wednesday, Friday, the answers could be different. So I think passion comes from a continuation of that theme. It's not a flash in the pan. Oh my gosh, I'm excited about. Calm down, breathe. So one other thing on the breathing I would suggest, and this goes back to the question that was posted, along with all this, heady cognitive thinking, sometimes exercise is a good thing to help you calm you down. If you are actively engaged in, exercising, do more of it. If you haven't, think about it, because there's something about being in control. When you are in a situation where it's really dire, often the underpinning of the feeling is not being in control. So the way to find your passion is, how can I get in control? Some of that might be physical. Some of that might be volunteerism. Some of that might be, as Sandra talked about, putting together your career plan. You wind up finding empowerment through these type of activities. And through that empowerment gives you control. And in control, some element, not everything, it gives you the way to weather the storms and know where you should be pointing forward as you look for the next great thing. Okay. So that's, I think, combining the physical and the mental and doing the work, I think will point all of us in a better direction.
What I hope everyone who's listening is gathering from the panelists is, well, a few things. First, that while this might feel like it's pretty simple stuff to think through at times, with Crossroad, it might be simple, but it's not easy to move forward, especially on your own, right? The other thing is, it's not necessarily complicated, but it can be complex. So this is where working with our coaches, our strategists, becomes so critical to you when you find yourself at that point and aren't sure where to turn and don't know what the opportunities look like and don't know how to get ready for those opportunities. So I know earlier Kim chatted out a link inviting you to connect with our strategists to get the conversation started. I really encourage you to do that, because at some point, whether it's now or in the future, wherever and whenever that might be, you're going to find yourself there at some moment. So it's kind of really important to get a handle on that sooner rather than later and start the journey and see where it leads you. You'll never know unless you take that first step.